All right, you know it's going to be good when the deepfake comes out. So, over the past couple of weeks, there's been some websites that have more or less been scrubbed from the internet. It looks like the Daily Stormer, 8chan or 8kun, I think is what it's called now, and Kiwi Farms. That's the one that you guys mentioned by name that you wanted me to talk about. Now, a couple of things that we need to get straight right out the gate. I was never really a user of Kiwi Farms. I never had an account there, and I've only been there maybe 3 or 4 times in my whole life for like 3 or 4 minutes at a time. So yeah, I'm no expert on the history or culture of Kiwi Farms. All I can really say about it from what I saw is that it more or less looks like 4chan, but in forum form. So, people have accounts, they've got usernames, and they've got post histories and reputations and all that kind of stuff that you see on various internet forums. And number 2, I'm not really going to get into the politics about why Kiwi Farms and all these other sites were taken down. You can go ahead and read news articles. There's been plenty of them published about it. I can't really say how true or false they are because, again, I was never really a user of Kiwi Farms, and I can't do my own investigation and look into it because, well, it's been purged from the internet. So not even going to talk about that. But one kind of political thing I'll talk about is the fact that I'm seeing so many people call this a free speech issue, right? They're saying that shutting down these websites is free speech, or it infringes on free speech. And it does kind of infringe on the spirit of free speech, but there's not really any laws that are being broken here, okay? This isn't like, the government shutting down a protest or, locking you up for saying something bad about them. It's a bit of a different situation, right? I mean, we've seen this time and time again with social media sites. You can't go and create a Twitter account or a YouTube channel or a Facebook page and then say whatever you want on there. Even if you're fully within your legal right to do so, they still own those services, right? And so they can kick you off whenever they want. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. You're probably typing out a comment about this right now, but Kenny, Kiwi Farms wasn't a YouTube channel, it wasn't a Twitter page, it wasn't a Facebook page, it was its own website. Surely, a man should be able to talk about whatever he wants on his own website, right? Well, it kind of depends. And again, I don't know for sure whether or not this was the case with Kiwi Farms, but I'll just raise the question. How much of Kiwi Farms did Kiwi Farms really own? Yeah, they, built the site, right? They developed the front end, they, did their back end, they probably have a database or something like that. But how was it hosted? Okay, this is a very important question because most people who have websites don't have the website running on a server in their basement with a static IP that they bought from the ISP connected to that box, okay? Like if you had to do that, if everyone who wanted to start a website had to do that, there'd be like 10 websites out there on the internet, right? Like the cost of doing that is pretty high, okay? Buying a static IP, much more expensive if you get it from your ISP than, the dynamic ones that most people get. Server infrastructure, I mean, technically, any computer could be a server. This could be a server, right? Smartphone. But you probably wouldn't want something like this as a server, okay? Like, especially if it's going to be a popular place a lot of people are going to go to and you want like 5 nines of uptime, you're probably going to go and get a big boy server with a lot of redundancy. Very expensive to do that, like more than a used car. And also, another issue with static IPs is you can more or less figure out geographically where a server is by looking up its IP. And so if you're running a site like Kiwi Farms, you probably don't want people looking that up and, finding your house if it's hosted in the basement of your house. So given all of this, I'm just going to assume, again, don't know for sure, but I'm going to assume that Kiwi Farms was hosted on some kind of a VPS, right? Some other person's server. And there you have the social media issue once again. There's terms of service that those VPSs have that you have to follow, and typically they have a clause just like Twitter and YouTube does. It says, hey, we can shut you down at any time we want. Even if you didn't necessarily break our rules, we can still shut your website down. Registrars can also be a problem if you're hosting let's call them controversial websites. So the registrar, that's who you go and purchase a domain name from. But typically when you buy a domain from them, you're not really owning that domain. You're usually renting it from them, and you have a contract that you sign with them. And more than likely in that contract, there's a terms of service. And more than likely in that terms of service, there's the clause that says, we reserve the right to take your domain name from you, cancel your account, cancel your service for any reason that we want. In fact, we don't even have to tell you what the reason is. We could just pull the plug on you. In fact, I'm pretty sure GoDaddy has actually done that several times in the past with these kinds of sites. So that can also be an issue, right? Even if all the physical things are taken care of, right? You've got your own big boy server in your basement of a Bin Laden style compound. So there's no way anyone's getting in there to, shut down the server that way. But if they disconnect your domain name, well, now if someone goes to killpuppies.org, whatever your site's called, they're going to get a DNS error. And chances are the people that are using your website don't know the IP address of your site. They still could access it that way, but if they don't know where it is, then, well, your site is effectively shut down. Now, in the cases of these sites, from the research I was able to do, it doesn't look like any of these are the reason they were shut down. I just bring them up because, well, if you want to run a controversial site, these are the kinds of things you have to take into account. But the reason Kiwi Farms got taken down was from DDoSing. Okay, so that's a distributed denial of service attack. Now, there's all kinds of different denial of services that can take place at any level of the OSI model. A lot of them can be defended against by just setting up your site properly, okay? Like, I shouldn't be able to type in, some nonsense into an input form and cause your site to go offline. However, especially when we're talking about DDoS, not a DOS, which is just like a single person doing the denial of service, right? Distributed denial of service, you run into a certain kind of attack that's really difficult to mitigate. It's a fill the pipes attack, okay? So when you go to set up a site with like a VPS or something like that, the VPS owner is probably going to be able to promise you maybe 1 gigabit per second of bandwidth. But if someone can manage to fill the pipes with a gigabit per second consistently of just nonsense packets, your site's effectively shut down. Now, you can still mitigate this kind of attack with a content delivery network, all right, CDNs. Now, the way that these CDNs work is, remember, we're talking about a distributed denial of service, okay? So these are computers all over the world sending you a bunch of junk packets. Well, with a CDN, if someone is trying to access your site, whether they're sending you junk packets or they're a legitimate user from, say, India, instead of going to your IP or loading everything from your IP that might be in Texas, it's going to load them from a box in India. So this gives you the benefit of making your site faster, and also makes it so that if people are trying to DDoS you, well, they're not all just going to hit that one box. They're going to end up hitting a whole bunch of different boxes and not take down the whole site. Now, Cloudflare is probably the most popular CDN out there. I mean, I can't think of any more popular than them. And they have a lot of bandwidth, okay? Like, you can't fill their pipes. It's basically impossible. It's like throwing a hot dog down a hallway, all right? It's not gonna happen. Although they do have outages sometimes, which is funny because since so many people use them, when Cloudflare has an outage, it ends up taking out large portions of the internet, but that's a whole other subject. Cloudflare also has terms of service. And in their terms of service, they have that clause that says, for any reason, we don't even have to give you the reason, we can pull the plug on your site and no longer provide that DDoS protection for you. That is what happened to Definitely Kiwi Farms, and it also appears to have been what happened to 8kun and the Daily Stormer. But I mean, you guys didn't even mention them, so you guys probably don't care too much about them. Yeah, they got DDoS to hell. And of course, a lot of people are going to DDoS them because it's a controversial website, right? People don't really like what they're posting on there. And DDoSing is pretty easy. It doesn't really require any technical knowledge. I mean, you just have to be able to download Tor and maybe get some Monero and pay somebody for the DDoS service. Because, I mean, there's botnets out there, right? There's thousands, if not millions, of compromised computers that can be used to do this distributed denial of service. And it's really difficult to block those IPs because they're residential IP addresses. So let's recap. If you want to create a website or a service that is controversial, or a lot of people start hating it and trying to shut you down for whatever reason, it's very important that you own your infrastructure, own your domain, and I mean truly own it. Renting it from GoDaddy is not owning it. And you need to own a means to mitigate DDoS, which, like I said, you can mitigate most types of DDoS by just developing your site correctly and not having a input forum where you can just put some characters in and it lets you shut the website down. Not saying that was the case with Kiwi Farms. I've got no idea, but I've seen that type of stuff on the internet before on other websites. And so to mitigate all forms of DDoS, that's more or less going to mean you setting up your own CDN, and hopefully you've got it big enough to where it's able to withstand all those attacks. Or you could possibly host it on IPFS in some kind of distributed manner. And yeah, people won't be able to DDoS that in any way. So how do you do that? How do you set up a site like this that can't be shut down? Well, look no further than dark web marketplaces. Because not only are these sites controversial, but they're actually illegal. Okay, there are feds routinely trying to shut these sites down, and a lot of them are able to stay up for a long time. Some of them even go through their full life cycle without getting caught. And there's more and more of them that are able to do that because, hey, as time goes forward, knowledge about OPSEC and knowledge about how to run these kinds of sites goes up. So dark web marketplaces, they don't have really any presence on the clear web. Okay, they are only on the darknet with an onion domain. I don't know if Kiwi Farms has an onion domain or not. I was looking into it for about 5 or 10 minutes earlier today, couldn't find one. So I'm going to assume that they don't have one. That's probably something that they should look into, because an onion domain is something you actually own. It's derived from a private key. You don't go and buy onion domains. So you could create one, and I would recommend that they do this if they're going to do it, that starts with Kiwi Farms, right? So you need to generate a whole bunch of them and probably need some CPU, possibly even GPU power to generate a bunch of these addresses. I mean, you're going to need to generate millions to get that exact one. But once you've got that, it's then pretty difficult to copy it. That's important to do, because if you create a site on the dark web, especially if it's one that's going to have money going through it, people are going to copy that website. And, it's the other side of the coin, right? On the dark web, there's not really any authority to say, oh yeah, this site is real, this site is a scam, this site is trying to copy this site. That doesn't exist, okay? All it's going to take is somebody to use like HTTP track to download all of the front-end components of your site. They can clone that onto their own onion domain, spin it up, possibly pay whoever owns like Phobos or the other dark web search engines to rank their site higher, and then boom. Now, people have effectively tricked your users into using their sites, because people usually don't bookmark onion sites, and they damn sure don't type in the domain of onion addresses, because that would just be crazy. So yeah, get a vanity one that starts with the word Kiwi Farms and a bunch of random alphanumerics after it. And because of the way that Tor works, you actually don't have to own the infrastructure. Like, you don't necessarily have to run the onion site off of a server in your basement, although maybe a good idea to do, especially if the site is just controversial and not illegal. But going the onion route is going to obfuscate the IP address, so that's going to greatly lower the chances that whatever VPS you're using is going to shut your site down. Now, with Kiwi Farms, there's another part of them getting shut down, which is apparently every single archive on archive.org of Kiwi Farms also got scrubbed from that service. So with archive.org, we have the same issue that I've been going over again and again, which is that's their site, that's their service. They have a terms of service on that site that probably has a clause that says something along the lines of, hey, we reserve the right to delete any content from this site for any reason, and we don't even have to give you the reason. So if you're running a controversial service, archive.org is not an archive. That's not how you archive controversial things. This is how you archive controversial things. This is an external hard drive, or better yet, put the controversial content on an internal hard drive, keep that computer running, and then create a torrent of the content. Then spread that magnet link to all the like-minded people so that they can download all the information and then they can seed it as well. That is how you create an archive that can't effectively be shut down like archive.org did. So yeah, internet censorship, it sucks, but there's so many different ways, as I've explained in this video, that different services have to shut your website down. So if you want to run a controversial website or a service, or you know what, actually get rid of the controversy, because the threshold for controversial just keeps going down over time. So honestly, this is something that everybody should know about, not just administrators of Kiwi Farms. If you want to have an opinion on the internet and not get shut down, you need to know about Tor. You need to know about I2P. You need to know about IPFS and the BitTorrent protocol. Okay, these tools exist specifically for this purpose to, prevent censorship. And like I said, there are lots of sites out there that are not just controversial, but they are straight up illegal, using these methods to run their services, and they are doing it very successfully. So this is definitely something that these site owners that got their site shut down should start looking into, and that, the followers, I guess the people that want to use these sites should also start looking into. Now, are you going to get reduced traffic if you are only on I2P or you're only on the dark web? Yeah, only a fraction of people that use the internet are on the dark web. The vast majority of them are on the clear web. And not as many people are going to be able to figure it out, right? I mean, even with the Tor button that's built into Brave, there's still some people that are just, they're going to miss that. They're not going to know how to go to it, or they're not going to know how to go to an onion site, things like that. I mean, I try to help by making tutorials, but even then, I'm sure with my very simple tutorials, there's some people that still can't figure it out. So yeah, you're not going to have as many customers. It's going to be more expensive, especially if you're creating your own CDN, and things might overall be more difficult. So I guess that's just up to all these various site owners to decide if it's going to make financial sense for them to continue running on the dark web in a way that's a bit more censorship proof. But hey, like I said, tools exist. The financial aspect, that's a whole other can of worms. So if you want to get your site back up, go ahead and start using those tools. And I almost forgot, Burger Child was one of the people that watched my videos that wanted me to talk about this Kiwi Farms thing specifically. And we had a bit of a gentleman's agreement, an unofficial gentleman's agreement, mind you, that if I talk about the Kiwi Farms situation, maybe he would make an extended version of Sneed's Feed and Seed. So go do that, because, that's a good song, dude. I, actually enjoy it, Maybe add another verse, another guitar solo. That kid plays a mean guitar. But yeah, I upheld my end of the bargain. Time for you to uphold yours.